Hi guys, and welcome to this week's video and episode 2 of Tackling Our TBR. So there's a lot to go over. One, sorry if my voice sounds weird. I'm on day 7 of having strep, but I think I'm finally on the mend after trying some antibiotics, them not working, etc. Finally on the mend. I'm not supposed to be talking much, so this is gonna be like my only conversing that I do all day. Because I took a vow of silence so I could get better. But I am feeling okay. I don't feel like I'm straining my voice. I'm using the microphone, so I'm not talking very loud. And after this, 15-minute video, I won't be talking. Okay, we've got a lot to go over in week 2. I'm going to start with stats, and then we can kind of go into the details about the book I read. So I did finish a book. I actually read it over the course of 2 weeks, so it was not read in a week. Kind of cheaty, but it got done. I read The Sirens of Titan by Kurt Vonnegut for school, so it did not lower the number of books on my TBR, but it's still a book read, bringing me to 5 for the year, which is, I'm already happy with that progress since we started this challenge out at 3. Unfortunately, my screen time on TikTok did go up, so this challenge started as me realizing I wasn't doing things I actually enjoyed doing, and I was spending over a day on TikTok a week. So we're not even talking about my cumulative screen time, we're just talking about my TikTok screen time. Over this past week, my TikTok screen time was like 22 hours or something, and the week before it was 18. So there's definitely a trend up there that I'm going to try and get under control. I have a really bad phone addiction. It's something I've struggled with for a long time. So I don't expect myself to be perfect, and I'm not going to let that spiral into me giving up, which is what I would have done in the past. I'm just going to keep pushing forward and keep trying to get better because it's all we can do. Um, so I'm definitely gonna try and work on that a little bit. I was looking at some of the times that I was on my phone the most, and it's definitely like at night when I get home from work or something like that, because sometimes when I get home, and I'm also gonna give myself grace because I've been sick for a week. So when I'm sick, I spend more time on my phone, especially on TikTok, because I already have a bit of a hard time getting up and doing things, but especially when I just feel so drained and like crap. So, definitely giving myself some grace. We're going to try and get back on it this week and get it down to under 20 hours. That's all I have for stats wise. We are about halfway through Bury Our Bones of the Midnight Soil by V.E. Schwab, which I think is good progress considering I had to read a 300-page book for school. And we finished Kurt Vonnegut's book. So that's what we'll be talking about today. I did download a PDF and read it on my Kindle, which definitely recommend if you have a hard time with reading stuff for school, because I don't buy the books that I read for school because I don't know if I'm going to like them and or finish them, etc. So I typically look for a PDF online, and usually I can find them pretty easily because I typically get recommended older books, and then you can upload it to your Kindle. So that's what I did because I hate reading on my iPad screen, on my computer screen. The one thing I will say is obviously it's a PDF, so it's not formatted for Kindle, so the words are like tiny. Let me show you guys. Like, I'm blind as a bat. I was holding it like this. But other than that, definitely recommend uploading it to your Kindle. That's amazing. I will be doing that with my book draft as well. Now let's get into the actual review of the book. So, The Sirens of Titan follows a cast of characters across the Milky Way galaxy. We start on Earth, then we go to Mars, and then Mercury, back to Earth again, and finally to Titan, which is one of the moons of Saturn. The main character that we follow through most of the book is Malachi Constant, who in the very beginning of the book he meets with another character named Miles. I actually don't know his full name. I only know his last name. We're gonna call him Rumford because that's his last name. He meets with Rumford, who basically tells him, "Yeah, we're gonna meet in the future on Mars, and you're gonna be, whoa, we're gonna meet in the future on Mars, and my wife's gonna have your baby." And Malachi's like, "Why would I go to Mars? I don't want to go to Mars." Malachi's like the richest man in America, so he's like, "What the hell? I don't want to do this." And we watch him basically do everything in his power to not let this happen, and then it happens anyways. And so we watch him ride the roller coaster of life, as Rumford would put it. Um, Rumford is trapped inside of a chronosynclastic infundibulum. I think I said that right. So he can see the future. He knows everything that is going to happen in the universe, and it's so I mean, his word is essentially like people treat him like a god, like his word is law. He does not regard himself as a god. He's just has that knowledge. Anyways, that's what the story follows. It basically follows Malachi as he tries to stop that future from coming true, and then as it comes true. And there's so many thoughts, I don't even really know where to start because I'm still digesting this book. One thing I'm going to start with is Vonnegut is a master of storytelling and world building because though a large portion of this novel takes place on Earth and in our solar system, the way he describes it and the way that he differentiates it through absurdism and everything from our world does not feel like you're reading about our planet, which I think is really, really interesting because the whole thing is talking about Earth this, Earth that, and the Milky Way galaxy, and blah, blah, blah. But it doesn't feel like our planet. And I can completely picture everything he's describing. I can picture the caves on Mercury. I can picture Mars. I can picture the palace on Titan. Like it's also firmly come up in my brain because of how thoroughly he describes it without making it boring. Because sometimes when you have large blocks of prose without dialogue, it can be a bit clunky and hard to get through, and that's not how I felt at any point in this book. I didn't feel like the story moved slow. I felt like it moved pretty fast, and I was definitely interested in the whole book. There was no part where reading it felt like a chore, which has never been the case when I'm assigned a book to read for school. So that was really nice. The characters aren't necessarily likable, but they're very realistic and they're very complex. So I like them. I love complex characters. I hate when it's black and white. I don't think that you can properly have a story where the characters are kind of black and white, unless, of course, you're talking about Nazi Germany and stuff like that, like real events where it's or something like that, like when you're depicting something like a genocide. But regular everyday people, nobody is 100% perfect, and I think Vonnegut portrays that perfectly. I do think the most likable characters are Unk and Salo or Salo. I don't really know how to say. I don't really know how to say his name, but I think it's Salo. Those are like the most likable characters, but everybody's just very complex and the whole story is really interesting, and the way that Vonnegut satirizes um and critiques the human experience is really, really fascinating because there's some things that are like bright and in your face. It's like he definitely critiques the military and the government and organized religion, and there's some other more subtle things that would kind of go over your head if you're not taking the time to really digest this novel. I actually read other people's reviews and watched video essays on it while I was reading it to help me with some things I wasn't understanding because it's been a while since I've closely read a book for school. So if you're gonna read it, I would highly recommend that. That way, like, you can really get the full experience. This is not a book I probably would have picked up organically, but I definitely was interested in reading some of Vonnegut's work. And one of the things school consistently teaches me is the value in picking up a book that I probably wouldn't have otherwise, because this is one of the best books I've read from this time period for school, which is like the 1960s is around when this was published. So, when I say this time period, I'm thinking like 1940s to 1980s. Like that's where my brain's going. And this is one of the best books I've read from that time period. I definitely enjoyed it more than like 1984 because 1984 there were parts that felt really slow. Um, Same for Anthem, etc. But I loved this and I could not put it down. I read pretty quickly, especially considering the constrictions on my schedule, and I did really enjoy it. So I'm feeling a lot more positive about the books I have to read for this class because initially I was really skeptical because they're all three books and they're all by old white men, which is definitely not my usual area of reading. I actually typically don't read books written by men, especially old white straight men, but I was pleasantly surprised. And that's not to say I write them all off, but I feel like I don't need to over explain that. You either get it or you don't. Anyways, I'm feeling much more optimistic. I will still be pairing his books with other books that people say like you can kind of co-read or partner read with. I don't have time to read them both at the same time, but I've made a list of books I will be reading that kind of coincide with the books that were assigned. That way I can get perspectives from other people in the same time period from different marginalized communities. So you're queer or you're a person of color or you follow a different religion, etc, because I really can. We know plenty about how straight white men see the world. I want to see it through other lenses. That's always been my interest. Overall, I give this book like a 3 out of 5. And the only reason, I know I've just spoken very highly of it, the only reason I give it a 3 out of 5 is because it's definitely a product of its time period and reflects some of the racism and misogyny being fought during that time. It's not the worst book I've ever read, but there are some phrasing and stuff in there where I'm like, that doesn't feel good, and further reinstates why I need to be reading books by authors from marginalized communities during this time period. So, not the worst book I've ever read, not the best, but definitely one of the ones I've enjoyed more for school. I'm really looking forward to reading the book that I've decided to co read with this, which is going to be Gideon the Ninth. I think that's what Reddit suggested. I know, laugh at me, I went to Reddit, but I was just looking at books people recommend you can read alongside, and the books that I got recommended were Gideon the Ninth, the fifth season by N.K. Jemisin, and then Parable of the Sower by Octavia E. Butler. So I'm going to be reading Gideon the Ninth, and I'm really excited. It's definitely not from the same time period, but it has some of the same elements that I've heard, same absurdism and stuff like that. So I'm just really excited to get into that and to kind of have a palate cleanser. I think the book I'm most excited to read alongside is definitely Parable of the Sower. I have a physical copy from my mom who loved it, and I've been meaning to read it forever, so that will actually count against my TBR. Now, the fifth season and Gideon the Ninth won't, because I do have them from Kindle Unlimited. They're not on my physical TBR, but reading is reading. So as much as I do want to get that TBR down, I think that relating these books and getting that value from it is going to be more important than just lowering the number on my physical TBR. Book I'm reading next. So we're still reading Bury Our Bones, The Midnight Soil by V.E. Schwab. I'm about halfway through. I'm loving it so far. I could go on forever about how much I love V.E. Schwab's writing, the way that she writes, especially women. I have read her books about men too, but like just the way that she writes everybody, it's really interesting. Another author of beautifully complex characters. I love reading about selfish women and morally gray women, and that is really what this whole book is about. So I'm loving it. It is like 500 pages, so I'm about 200 and I don't know, 260 pages in, I think, or something like that. I'm really, really loving it, and I cannot wait to finish. I'm gonna try and get some of that out today because this is my last day off until I film this next video. Every other day, it's building my reading around work. Um, and then we are reading If Upon a Winter's Night, A Traveler by Italo. I don't know how to say his last name. It's a C something. I'm sorry. But I did start it. I read like the first couple of pages, and it's really interesting because it looks like it's told in second person. And I don't know that I've ever read a book told in second person point of view. So I'm really excited for that. Again, I'm honestly kind of surprised by how excited I am for some of the books that we're reading in this class. Um, but I will share more thoughts as we get further into some of this reading, and I'm doing reading responses today, working on schoolwork. And yeah, I feel like I had more I wanted to update you guys on because I don't want this to just be a series where I'm like throwing stats at you in book reviews. Like, there's obviously a purpose to all of this, that, and I'm pursuing something I'm very passionate about through this challenge. So, on TikTok, I actually started a series called the Former Quitters Club, and it is for ex chronic quitters or recovering chronic quitters, which is what I consider myself. And what a chronic quitter is I'm trying to think of a way to describe it because honestly, it can be such a broad term, and what how I identify as a chronic quitter might not be how you identify or how anybody else identifies. So I'm gonna give my example, but don't let that limit you from participation or identifying with the term. So I have struggled with executive dysfunction my entire life. I have ADHD, I have depression, I have anxiety, and I try not to shy away from talking about mental health stuff on my accounts because I think it's very important to have that visibility and that transparency because the big thing with this club, with the Chronic Quitters Club, is not I have my shit together. I actually effectively don't have my shit together. That's just the blatant honest answer. But every day I'm making an effort and I've learned how to reset quickly after bad days. And that's what the whole week has been for me because I was sick, is what I would have, when I'm trying to do a life reset, is what I would have considered bad days because I didn't get everything I wanted to get done. But I got some things done and I'm trying again every single day, which is a win because in the past, if I miss one day on my new life or my life reset, then I just like spiral and it turns into a week, which turns into a month, which turns into a year. And that is really the thing that I'm working the hardest on. That is what the Former Quitters Club is all about, is not letting those bad days or those mistakes spiral and learning how to reset quickly. So I have this tab system, and I'm looking over here because I have like a whiteboard with all my tabs for the week written out, and I kind of X them out as I complete them. But yeah, so that's what the Former Quitters Club is all about. It's about me learning how to cope with these things I've had forever, because I've had ADHD my whole life. I didn't get diagnosed till I was like 16. So I did already, like, I'd been living with it for so long at that point that learning how to cope with it felt impossible. I was diagnosed with depression and anxiety when I was 15, and I showed symptoms and signs of them a lot longer before that. So these things have really made it hard for me to give something my all my whole life. And my goal over the last year to 10 months has been to stop letting them control everything and to just try and do the little things I can do every single day and not letting a bad day define me. So that's what the Former Critters Club is all about. It's about not giving up on yourself, essentially, because the number of times that I have given up on myself and like accepted defeat when there was just no reason. I wasn't defeated. This is not like a quest that I'm on, and if you mess up a little bit, the world is going to end. This is a constant effort to know and love myself and to accomplish the things that I deserve. So, I will be talking more. I'm going to post about it like every single day on TikTok because it's really more of a short form content thing. But this tackle our TBR falls into all of that because that's a huge part of me trying to reduce my screen time and do the things that I love. That's the reason I started this series. So if you want to see more content and stuff like that about how I'm managing my life in other ways, whether it's schoolwork, TikTok, writing, etc., definitely check out my TikTok or my Substack. And thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you next week for episode 3 of Tackle Our TBRs.